In the heart of ancient Rome, an ominous shadow began to cast itself over the empire. It was a time of change, a time of promise, but also a time of impending dread. The year was 37 AD, and Rome was about to witness the rise of a new emperor, Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, better known as Caligula. The unexpected death of Tiberius, the previous ruler, had left the throne vacant. The citizens of Rome, weary from Tiberius's stern rule, rejoiced as Caligula, the young and charismatic prince, ascended to power. Little did they know, the dawn of this new era was not a beacon of hope, but rather the beginning of a reign shrouded in darkness. As the celebrations echoed through the streets of Rome, and the cheers for their new leader filled the air, a sense of unease began to ripple beneath the surface. Unbeknownst to them, the reign of Caligula would soon plunge Rome into unimaginable horror. As the first months of his reign passed, the once beloved Caligula started to show signs of a cruel and unpredictable nature. Caligula was initially hailed as a beacon of hope for the Roman Empire, his ascension to the throne marking the end of a brutal and bloody era. But as the novelty of his rule began to fade, so too did the veil of sanity that had seemingly protected him. The city of Rome watched in bewilderment as their new emperor started to display erratic behavior, his actions becoming increasingly whimsical and impulsive. Caligula's lavish spending became a source of concern for the citizens of Rome. He threw extravagant parties, squandering the empire's wealth on his whims. His obsession with luxury and opulence was evident in the grandiose constructions he commissioned, depleting the empire's treasury. It was not just his extravagant lifestyle that troubled the citizens, but also his increasing obsession with his own divinity. In a startling display of arrogance and madness, Caligula declared himself a living god. He demanded to be worshipped, insisting that statues of him be erected in temples throughout Rome. He even went so far as to claim that he could control the weather, attributing any changes to his divine intervention. Perhaps the most infamous incident that showcased his growing insanity was his decision to make his favorite horse, Incitatus, a consul. This act was seen as a clear sign of his deteriorating mental state and a mockery of the once respected Roman political system. His actions were not just eccentric, but also increasingly cruel. He took pleasure in public executions and was known to personally torture prisoners. His unpredictable nature and the fear it instilled kept the citizens of Rome on edge, never knowing what his next move might be. The once promising emperor was spiraling into madness, his actions causing fear and confusion among the Roman populace. The descent into madness had begun, and the horror of Caligula's reign was only just starting to reveal itself. The descent into madness was swift and terrifying, with Caligula's reign turning into a horrifying spectacle of cruelty and debauchery. Caligula's rule swiftly transformed into a blood-curdling theater of the grotesque, his actions becoming increasingly brutal and shocking. He seemed to revel in the public spectacles of violence that he orchestrated, as if they were some twisted form of entertainment. Gladiatorial games took on a new, sadistic edge. Caligula was not content to merely watch. He became an active participant, sending innocent people into the arena to meet their gruesome end. High-ranking officials were not safe from his capricious wrath either. With a dismissive wave of his hand, he would humiliate them, stripping them of their titles, their dignity, and often their lives. His court became a place of paranoia and fear, where the whispering of plots and conspiracies echoed through the halls. Yet it was not just the physical violence that made Caligula's reign so terrifying. His sexual depravity knew no bounds. He was said to have seduced and violated both men and women, including his own sisters. He cared little for the sanctity of marriage or family, taking pleasure in the shock and scandal his actions caused. His palace became a den of iniquity, echoing with the cries of his victims. Caligula's reign was not one of justice or leadership, but of personal gratification and unbridled cruelty. He abused his power and position, turning the Roman Empire into his personal playground of horror. His actions were not those of a ruler, but of a madman, drunk on power and devoid of empathy. The reign of terror was not limited to the confines of his palace or even Rome itself. His madness spread like a plague, infecting the entire empire with fear. The people lived in a state of constant apprehension, never knowing when or where the emperor's madness might strike next. The reign of Caligula had turned from a beacon of hope into a nightmarish reality. As the horrors of Caligula's reign continued, so did the whispers of rebellion, and the longing for an end to the nightmare. The Praetorian Guard, once the protectors of the emperor, found themselves in the middle of a plot to assassinate Caligula. The whispers of rebellion grew louder, echoing through the marbled halls of the imperial palace. The guards, weary of the emperor's madness and brutality, were ready to act. A plan was devised, a plan as dark as the reign they sought to end. The man who once stood as a beacon of hope for Rome was now a source of dread. His rule had turned into a grotesque spectacle of power and madness, his actions becoming increasingly erratic and cruel. And so, the Praetorian Guard decided that the tyrant's life must be extinguished. The day of Caligula's brutal end was as unexpected as it was swift. The guards, driven by a desperate need for change, struck him down in an act as violent as the reign they sought to end. The emperor, who had reveled in his absolute power, met his end at the hands of those he once commanded. The news of Caligula's death rippled through the city. The initial shock gave way to a sense of relief. The Roman citizens, who had lived under the shadow of his reign, felt a glimmer of hope. The nightmare was over. Yet, even as they celebrated the end of the tyrant's rule, a sense of unease lingered. The horrors they had witnessed were not easily forgotten. Caligula's brutal reign had left a profound impact on the heart of Rome. His actions had turned the city into a place of fear and uncertainty. Even though he was no longer alive, his legacy lived on. His reign of terror had come to a brutal end, but the scars of Caligula's reign had been deeply etched into the heart of Rome. In the wake of Caligula's death, Rome was left to reckon with the horrors that had unfolded. The once mighty Rome, the empire that had conquered vast territories and civilizations, was now in shambles, a mere shadow of its former glory. Caligula's reign had been a reign of terror, marked by extravagant spending, brutal executions, and perverse entertainments that left the Roman citizens in a state of constant fear and mistrust. The city's coffers were drained dry, the wealth that once fueled Rome's expansion and prosperity squandered on Caligula's whims and fancies. The grand spectacles, lavish feasts, and ostentatious constructions, all these had come at a staggering cost. Rome was left in financial ruin, its economy crippled and on the brink of collapse. But the economic devastation was just one facet of the aftermath. The psychological scars ran deeper. The Roman citizens, once proud and confident, were now filled with a deep-seated fear and mistrust. Trust, once lost, is not easy to regain. The populace had seen firsthand the depths of depravity a ruler could sink to, and they were wary, forever looking over their shoulders, fearing the return of such a reign of terror. Caligula's reign had also left an indelible mark on Roman politics and society. The Senate, once a revered institution, had been reduced to a puppet in the hands of a madman. The political landscape was forever changed, with power concentrated in the hands of the emperor, a dangerous precedent that future rulers could exploit. The societal norms, too, were skewed. Morality, ethics, and virtue, these values that once defined Roman society, were now tainted with the shadow of Caligula's reign. The citizens had seen the worst of human nature, and it was a sight they could never forget. The horrors of Caligula's reign were a chilling reminder of the depths of human cruelty and madness, a reminder that would haunt Rome for centuries to come. The story of Caligula's reign is not just a tale of horror, but also a stark warning from history. His rule, drenched in blood and madness, left an indelible mark on Rome. The city's spirit was trampled under the weight of his cruelty, its people living in a constant state of fear and dread. From his despotic rule, we glean a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the potential for human brutality. This period in history serves as a mirror, reflecting the depths to which society can sink when power is wielded without restraint or accountability. Yet, it also highlights the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to rise from the ashes and rebuild. Caligula's reign of terror ended, but Rome endured. As we delve into the darkest corners of human history, we are reminded of the potential for cruelty that lies within power, and the importance of vigilance and accountability in leadership.